fell down. So we're going to pick our story back up, beginning in chapter 19. Now remember, up until now, we had the 7 sons of Sifka, and you remember they was going to cast out this demon, and they said, in the name of who Paul preaches, and the demon says, well, you know, I know Paul, and I know Jesus, but I don't know that. I don't know who you are, and they beat him up. Well, that is kind of where we're going to pick up today. Beginning in verse 21, it says, now after these things were finished, this is everything that is going on in Ephesus, everything that the problems that Paul is having. It says, after this is finished, Paul resolved in the spirit he's going to go to Jerusalem. He said, you got to go to Jerusalem. And old Paul said, you know, I think I'm going to go back through Macedonia one more time. And that is exactly what he did. He hit Macedonia, but he hit Achaia. And so after he is there, he sends Timothy and Erastus back to Macedonia, while he particularly stayed, and we're fixing to see that here. Now then, what I want to point out is on our map, everything seems to be happening right here in Ephesus. This is where things, and back here in Corinth, things are really, really happening in the church. Both of these places are kind of the crossroads to anywhere in the world you wanted to go. And I think that is going to contribute to the spread of Christianity. Because every time Paul would go into one of the synagogues, he would preach. And he would stay there for a long, long time. So all of Asia, especially Asia Minor, Galatia, all these areas, churches are expanding. And in chapter 20, a little bit later, we're going to be introduced to probably 15 people. Yes.
It's so bright outside that it's hard to see it.
Is that better?
Yes.
Well, that's the best I can do.
That's better.
There's another seat up here.
All right, Tarsus is going to be in what is called Galatia, but that is still part of Asia. This is going to be Southeast Asia. But everything is happening in these two areas right here, and that's because of the crossroads. So in chapter 20, we're going to be introduced to 12 to 15 people that are going to be followers of Paul. Now, when you think about it, in the letters that he has written, those epistles or those letters to the churches are important because it's to the individuals that participate within the church. Now then, the letter to Timothy is going to be just a little bit different. And when we look at where all these churches are located, I know you won't be able to see that, but again, here's Corinth, here's Ephesus. But look at all these churches that have been established by Paul during his ministry. So the gospel is getting out, the word of Jesus is getting out. I don't know if any of you watched Newsmax or not, but last night they had a special. It was about Paul. It was great. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know, and then I learned some things that I knew that I had forgotten. But Paul is a great individual. I mean, he got started late in life as far as Christianity went, but his education really began as a young man, 12, 13 years old. And he knows the scriptures forward and backwards. He educates his followers to know the Scripture, so that when they know those and he tells them about Jesus Christ, they can say, hey, he was predicted back here hundreds of years ago, and Jesus fulfilled all this, and now you and I are witnesses. We're supposed to be just like Paul and tell people what is going on. So when we pick up our story, beginning back in verse 13, we know that Paul and his disciples had to run in with a demon. Demon whooped upon some folks. But look at what happens here. It says, about that time, a major disturbance occurred in what? Does this ever work for me? Hey, I'm so narrow-minded. If I get started, I don't know where I'm at when I go back. And I appreciate whoever Rita bought me some batteries. Thank you, Rita.
You're very welcome.
Because these things is about $30 a pop. And it doesn't just open for me. It's always something.
We're glad you're always prepared for that pocket knife.
Hey, let me tell you what. We got a new principal one time. And I whipped out that pocket knife to do something for him. Well, you thought I'd have slapped him. You got a knife. You can't have a knife in school. I'm thinking, boy, where you from? You ain't from Alabama. I think I put him in backwards. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing. Okay, now then, maybe I can get to go. All right, we're going to go back, we're going to pick it up. So all these things have happened. And says that about that time, this major disturbance happens because in regard to the wedding. So this man named Demetrius, he's a silversmith. He made silver shrines for Artemis or Dana, whether you're Roman or Greek. But anyway, his business is bringing in a ton of money. So as we begin to look at this, he gathered these men together with workmen of similar trades and said, men, you know that our prosperity depends on this business. You see and hear that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, this Paul has persuaded and turned away a considerable number of people, saying that gods made with hands are not gods at all. Not only is there danger that this trade of ours will fall into disrepute, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be regarded as worthless, and that she, whom all of Asia and the world worship, will even be dethroned from her magnificence. Now then, you got to realize that in Greece, Macedonia, all the way back into Asia, they worship these gods. And when we talk about Dana, there was not another one like her, or Artemis. She is the goddess of the hunt. She's also known as the goddess of wild animals, wilderness, childbirth, and virginity. She was protector of young children, and people actually worshiped her. They believed that she was the daughter of Zeus, the twin sister to Neptune or Apollo. I don't know. Anyway, she's twin sister somebody. But this right here is what the uproar is about, is the temple. This thing is the seventh wonder of the world at that time. And people came from all areas of the known earth to this temple to worship and do it. So anyway, this thing is 350 feet long, 180 feet wide. You go up there to J.B. Pennington, to the football field, and you look down on that field when it's marked off on a Friday night, from the end zone to the end zone, sideline to sideline, that's how big this thing was. And it was held up with 121 pillars. But not only that, this thing was built around 550 BC. It hung around until 262 AD when the Goths destroyed it. It was never rebuilt because there was no need then. But anyway, this thing was magnificent. And people would come from all around to see it. Now then, if you were standing at the front looking all the way to the back, in the very back is going to be a statue of Artemis herself, or Dana, whichever one you choose to call her. Folks, this thing was magnificent on the inside. As you look, this is what you would be looking at. But the tapestries, and this is going from writers from the 4th century BC even to the time of Paul. These writers have talked about how magnificent this building was. Now then, this Demetrius, that is a worker of silver, and they would make these shrines to Artemis. This is what survived. Can you see the detail in that? It's in some museum somewhere over there. But anyway, you look at the detail, they're selling these things. I don't know what gold wrought or silver wrought, but anytime you've got this kind of workmanship in something, it's going to be expensive. So that's why this guy is complaining. He said, hey, brother, hey, if this Paul, we don't shut this Paul up, he's getting into our trade. We're gonna be broke. We're gonna be like Jaden. Jaden broke. Today, if we could go to Ephesus, this is all that is going to remain of that seventh wonder of the world. And I'd love to go. But my daughter and I, we're talking about going to Greece now since I can't go to Israel. But I would love to take a trip just across the Aegean Sea. You can do it by boat, and you can go to all these ruins in Ephesus that are still there. Folks, to me, it would be great. Well, that's what is going on here. Now, if you look, and I don't know why I got 8 up here, but if you look at verse 29, it says, when the city was filled with confusion, and they rushed together into the theater, dragging along Cassius and Aristarchus, Paul's Macedonian traveling companions. And when Paul wanted to go into the assembly, the disciples would not let him. There is such a roar, an uproar. There is anger toward Paul and the way, toward him preaching about Jesus Christ. And these are not just Jews, but they're Gentiles as well, and they see that their money is going to be disrupted. So they hate Paul. They want to shut Paul up. They want to kill him. But his disciples, for some reason, hey, you don't want to go in there. They're going to kill you, buddy. And at that point, I'm wondering if Paul got to thinking. Do they hate me like I hated Stephen when I had him stoned and put to death? That's some pretty good stuff. Because Paul so hated the Christians, he hunted them down and had them murdered. And that's what these people are wanting to do to him now. So, picking up in 3 Corinthians, some, Artemis' friends, sent word to him repeatedly, urging him not to go, venture into the theater. So then some were shouting one thing, some another, for the assembly was in confusion, and the majority didn't know for what reason they'd come together.
Mob mentality.
Ooh. Let me tell you something. I'll never forget this as long as I live. When I was at Jackson, they was going to have, and this is in 1970, there's going to be a march, and it's going to go all the way around the circle, where all the buildings, it's going to start there. There's going to meet up at Bill Graves. We're going to march at 6 o'clock. All the newspapers and all the TV programs, they'd come to Jacksonville and they'd set up their cameras and they're getting ready for this march. Well, now me and my roommate, we are not the brightest or the shiniest. And plus, Dr. Montgomery sent word. I mean, it was everywhere you went that day. Anyone that shows up to march will be arrested. Now, I mean, that flyer's everywhere. Me and my buddy, we get us a lawn chair and we go to the march. And we take them lawn chairs and we sit them right under them big old trees and we sit back and we're ready for the march. Do y'all know the only ones that showed up was me and him? We was there to see the march. These folks don't even know why they're there. I was so disappointed. But at any rate, they don't know what is going on. Now then, it says some of the crowd concluded it was Alexander, since the Jews put him forward, and having mentioned with his hand, Alexander was intended to make a defense to the assembly. But when they recognized that he was a Jew, a single outcry arose from them all, as they shouted for about 2 hours. So they're up there just screaming and hollering. Nobody can hear what's going on. Kind of sounds like politics today, don't it? Nobody knows nothing. But when they recognized that he was a Jew, the single outcry, they shouted for 2 hours. Now then, so this is going on. Paul doesn't have anything to do with it. He doesn't go in. He said, no, I'm going to listen to you. So, after quieting the crowd, the town clerk said, men of Ephesus, what person is there, after all, who does not know that the city of Ephesus is a guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of the image which fell down from the sky? So she is worshipped. I mean, I don't know. So since these are undeniable facts, now how can they say this is an undeniable fact? Did anyone see her hit the ground or anything? But they're taking this to be fact. You ought to keep calm and do nothing rash. For you have brought these men here who are neither temple robbers nor blasphemers of the goddess. So then, if Demetrius and the craftsmen who are with him have a complaint against anyone, the courts are in session and the proconsuls are available. How then bring charges against one another? But if you want anything beyond this, it shall be settled in the lawful assembly. For indeed, we are in danger of being accused of a riot. in connection with today's events. Since there is no real reason for it, and in this connection, we will be unable to account for this disorderly gathering. After saying this, he dismissed the assembly. Remember where they are. Back in Corinth, back in Greece, Macedonia, this particular part of Southeast Asia. These were men of reason. They sat down, they didn't argue and scream back and forth at one another like what has happened here. There is mass confusion. But these people wanted to sit down and reason with one another, and that's why he said, hey, look, I'm the town clerk, shut up. You got something to say, we're going to do it in an orderly manner. The court is in session. And there would be, you say this, and then I get a rebuttal, and then you get a rebuttal. Folks, is that not the way that we should be able to sit down and discuss with one another? It's beyond me. It's just beyond me that we can't talk to one another about the saving grace of Jesus Christ. At any rate, so as we move into chapter 20, this is where we're going to pick up next week. And the reason we're getting out early, I got choir folks that needs to go, and we need to do whatever we got needs to be done. Does anyone have a word or testimony or anything? I promise next week will be longer.
Dennis, you was talking about earlier how these two places, how it was being spread so much. I just got thinking, we come up here for 20, 30 minutes and hear what you have to say, and we learn a lot during that time. But Paul was doing this for hours,
Yes.
every day, 7 days a week. Can you imagine how much they was learning and how much was being spread in just a week's time of his teaching and all back during this time? It was a lot, wasn't it?
I wish you could have seen that special that was on last night about Paul. Roma Downey, something about an angel. Touched by an angel. She was the star of that. She put her and her husband put this on, and it was really, really good. I mean, it was one of the best that I've seen, and it kind of just sucked you into it. It was so good. But that's how we should be. We should be that witness and a testimony in a lost and dying world.